Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me and the semester?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the morning section, we have finished these two parts. Brief introduction about the DVPM, diffusion diagnostic model, and another perspective, another derivation for this start from the score matching and logical dynamics. And we'll cover these three parts in this section. So let's begin. So but first, I want to introduce a generalized framework to unify the diffusion model we have introduced in the morning. If we recall in the diffusion models, how we start from our data to a noise, we build our Markov trend, and we do the transition step by step. So actually, the add noise and the denoising step, they are all discretized. And do we have another more convenient, more generous framework to disturb the data? From the data to a noise. So how about use a continuous case to add in the noise? So that's the formulas, the models we use to add in the noise for a continuous setting is use SDE, is a stochastic differential equations.
What do you
And
mean discrete and continuous here? With respect to time?
Yeah, record time. Recording in the DDPM, you from to x0 and to x1, x2, and to xt. Here's your data. Here is a noise, right?
Mm.
This transition is discretized. You have to set there 1, 2, 3, 4 t. It's a discretized transition. And continuous is, can we just we don't have to set the t, but just continuously to transfer from x0 to xt. And the model we used is the SDE, the stochastic differential equations. So it's a generalized model for this one. And what the SDE looks like, as it looks like something like these terms. So these terms, F terms, we call it the drift terms. And the G function here, we call it the diffusion terms or the fusion terms. So it's a basic definition, based concept about SDE. And even given SDE, from x0 to xt, here is described the forward SDE. So how about the backward SDE? Recall in the diffusion model, when we given the forward transition like a jump Gaussian gradually added noise, we use we construct also a Gaussian for back propagation, back transition, and optimize it. However, for SDE, actually, when you given the F and G, given the forward SDE like this form, you can directly write down the backward SDE from xt to x0 with these forms. So why the holes is just regarding to some very dense mass derivative, but I don't want to go such details. I'll just let you know, when given a forward SDE with given F, given G, you can directly write down the optimal or the best, the backward SDE, reverse SDE from those two data with these terms. We checked, let us check each term about its backward SDE. The F, as it is given, is consistent with the F, the drift term in the forward. The G is the fusion terms of the FDE. And you will see a term like this one. The log, the gradient of your log probabilities. The PT here, the PTX here. That's the probabilistic flow about your SDE. Because recall, given us SDE like this one, we can always write to modify the distribution about X on the given time t. So here we call these things the probabilistic flow about a given SDE. So that's the interesting things. When we we're given the forward SDE with this 4, and we directly get the backward reverse SDE with 4. But in this 4, when you check its term, it has a term. I call it a score function. I mean, exactly, it's just the gradient of the probabilistic flow of your forward SDE. And here we have these 4s. So any question?
GT is the scalar here, right?
GT, yeah.
So,
you can
consider-
you can be the scalar if your x and w, I mean the white noise is a vector. I think GT could be a vector, but I think in most cases they just see that GT as a scalar. I mean, so each dimension of your variables share the same fusion, to share the same scale of your noise.
Okay.
Yeah, and here you see why we have to introduce the score-based model or something to reintroduce the diffusion model, because under the SDE's framework, I mean from discretized diffusion to the continuous diffusion, the reverse SDE have a very important form, and the form about this term is just a score function we just talked about, and the method is the same. The idea is the same. When given the forward, given the backward, we want to optimize we want to use something to approximate this score function. So the formula will be like this one. We want to use this I want to build some neural network or other parameter models to estimate the real score function. If we can do this, we can just core doing the assembling process with some starting from the function. We can call just some numerical SDE solver or SDE sampler to based on the form of other reverse SDE and to get the final sample from the given noise from the given initial random noise. So does that make sense? Yeah, cool.
And so the reverse process is still a SDE.
Yeah. And the reason why the reverse SDE has this form, they have serious work have give a very solid proof. Yeah. So we just gather. So here is something like the unified or continuous framework to formulate diffusion problems. And the next question is how exactly to solve or learn the score-based model to approximate these terms. And here is a function given by this paper. Actually, you can see it's very similar to the score matching framework or the score matching functions. Here is our neural network for the score approximate models, and here is the current gradient about your log probabilities. Actually, you can count now. It's not like the probabilities we're talking in the discretized things, because it's from SDE. So given SDE, you can somehow use some method to write down the numerical results or the analytical for about these things. And then you use this neural network to match, and you solve this function to minimize still something like their feature divergence about your scores, the score matching, and then you get S. With this for about SDE, you get a generative model, and then from here to X0. So that's the whole big picture about their SDE-based continuous diffusion models.
Sure. What's the how do you compute the P of P0TXT underscored by you on the right hand side of equation 7?
You mean this term?
Yeah, the log P0TXT given X0.
Yeah, actually, if the general for about the SDE, it's very hard to get probabilistic flow. I mean, at each time step, what's the distribution of your X? It's very hard to get it. However, if your F and G follows some, I mean, very simple form. You can do some closed form about the P xt given x0.
But if you can get closed form of P xt given x0, why don't you just apply it the reverse SD?
Yeah, because I mean, the closed form of SDE is different to the closed form ODE, was that you can write down a function. Even you can write down, there's an analytical form of SDE, actually, it's not deterministic. It's something based on the different, I call it the sample of the noise at each steps.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
if you can get logarithm, if you can get the log density of the xt given
Yeah.
x0, assume that you'll also be able to get logarithm p of tx used in the reverse SD, right? You don't need to learn that. Just take the gradient. You just sample that.
Yeah, you're right. But I think at least I think in these models and in these settings, it's not there something like that. You can just write down the closed form about these things. You have to use some numerical based methods to compute the gradient or to go of this one.
Okay, so that means you must have some efficient way to compute this logarithm of p0t xt given x0, right?
Yeah. It's based on this random samples or you call the path of the SDE samples. So this log function is based on the expectation on xt given x0. So its expectation just means you take a series of the sample paths from your current SDE. For each path, you use some numerical methods to compute these terms. Sorry, I don't.
Do that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't check the detail about this code, so I'm not very quite sure so how to exactly compute these terms.
Okay, there's two possibilities. One is that computing this is efficient, but with some numerical method.
Yeah.
Second is that even you can write down the conditional probability of p of xt given x0, you can't get the log marginal probability of x at any time t.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, so I missed this point because I don't go to very details about how exactly to implement these things.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is because for any SD, if you want to obtain the probability density of the state at any time, namely PTX here, you can solve the so-called Fokker-Planck equation.
Yeah, I think that's the word. That's the method they're mentioning in the paper to stop the forward of the back length. Sorry, what's the name of the equation?
Fokker-Planck equation. If you can solve the Fokker-Planck, you don't need to learn that. Just solve that.
Yeah, but I think most of the case, in some case, you cannot do this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and let's see the connect. How this continuous framework is consistent with the discretized DPM. So here for the discretized DPM, here is the forward transition we defined just a Gaussian noise, just a Gaussian drive, and when how is corresponding to this continuous case. So the continuous SDE, the forward SDE, based on the adding noise Gaussian distribution will be our SDE like this block. So here is the G, here is the F. And we just plug in, use the previous framework to throw the SDE and as forward and write down the backward SDE and gather score matching train model to get the score approximate, and we can just draw the samples from the noise to data, use the forward SD, and recall that the forward SD is still given. It's based on the transition and the backward SD is learned because this have the term of the score function. You have to learn it, or you can solve it by the other approach. So I have to remind you, the forward SD is given and the backward SD is still learned. It's consistent with the DDPM. The forward transition is given and the backward transition we have to approximate, we have to optimize it. So brief. Yeah, cool. I don't put lots of detail on these two parts. I mean, the SDE framework, the continuous SDE framework for diffusion model. But actually, it's a very important. I think it's maybe the one of the most important paper in this field, because before this paper, before this continuous SDE, the DDPM, I mean the regular diffusion model, and the score matching based model, they are developed. They're kind of the separate community. I mean, there are lots of paper in the diffusion model. There are lots of paper in the score matching, the score-based model, and no one just highlight the connection about these two separate fields. However, when we from the discretized fields to the continuous field, this paper is proposed by a very outstanding PhD in Stanford. They just unify the development about DDPM and the score matching and use the SDE. So the different design about DDPM. So we can design the forward transition in this form. Of course, in the score matching community, they can design the forward transition with other form, like I think here is the sigma I minus 1 or something. But however, no longer how you design the transition forward transition form. You can always find a SDE and use the SDE framework in the continuous fields to define the DDPM and the about the score-based things. So that's the reason this paper uses SDE to reformulate, to redefine the diffusion model. Is a paper with a very great impact. So it's just not only from the discretized to the continuous, but it's also kind of to unify the different diffusion, different score, but also in some form of SDE. So that's the most contribution about this paper. But we don't go to very deep details about this. So how to exactly compute these things? Sorry, I don't go into details. But with this formulation about SDE to formulate the data noise transition by direction transition, we come to our today's key topic, the Schrödinger bridge. So recall, from the diffusion model or the scores-based model to SDE, we from the discretized to the continuous. And but in the forward SDE, the forward SDE is given and the backward is learned. However, in the Schrödinger bridge, these settings, we also learn the forward SDE. So you can see the figure right here. We still handle the task, I mean, from the transition from the data to the noise. And for the SGM is just a score generative model. It's just cover the diffusion model, the score-based model or something. Like the SDE is given, the backward is learned. However, for the Schrödinger bridge, we'll give a formal definition later in the next slide. But I want to keep the most key points in your minds. For the Schrödinger bridge, it's a more flexible model setting based on the SDE based the diffusion. It means the forward SDE, you should also learn it, and along with the backward SDE. So it just allows us to do more efficient transition from data to noise and noise to data. And what's the motivation we use this? We have introduced Schrödinger bridge because the SDE based things is already looks nice. Then just come to a very well-known drawback about the diffusion model. The current discrete diffusion model is that you have to set the diffusion step, I mean the big T here, to be very large, like maybe more than 1,000. And then you can ensure the data, like the S here, to converge to a real Gaussian. If the T set you set here is relatively slow, like maybe 20, even with the properly setting about the noise level or something, you cannot get a real Gaussian noise. So for example, you can focus on the box I write right here. Here you just use the T, I mean the diffusion step only 20 times. Only 20 times you can run the data from the S curve. We also get an S curve. It's become kind of noisy, but it still didn't converge to a real noise. So if we with these settings we train a backward, it should be hard because our backward sampling will run some real Gaussian, and the backward learning is bad because the forward learning is bad. So you will check the main paper about the diffusion model. People just criticize the diffusion model for this. There are lots of their time consuming and very costly because you have to set a very large T, especially for when you want to sample something, like you sample from the first samples on Gaussian noise, you have to do thousands of steps jump back to get a real time, to get a good S or good initial samples. That's the reason why the big models, like the DAI or something, they take lots of time. They're very time consuming to sample to sample to draw a new sample from the previous model because it's too large. And however, if we use the Schrödinger bridge is that, with this setting, as our forward is not just a given very simple Gaussian drive. After some training about the Schrödinger bridge, we can learn a very good SDE for forward. I mean, in these terms, with this very good forward SDE, it's very easy to from your initial data to a Gaussian noise in a very short step. I mean, maybe the n equal to 20, you can finish things. And with these things, we train our backward model. And when you use these things as a general model, given some Gaussian noise, you just need to take maybe 20 step or 10 step to from a Gaussian to the target data diffusion you want. So that's the motivation. One of the motivation to use the Schrödinger bridge to build a new fashion of diffusion models. So is that clear?
Do you need to convert or transform the data to noise and then learn this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you
have to
need
do
noise. You do need noise and orange data for training, both forward and backward.
Yes. That's the ideal case. But in the initial diffusion model, to reach that ideal case, you have set diffusion step to very large, or even with the SDE, you have to set the involving time of your SDE for SDE to be very long, and then you can gather to the samples from your initial data to a noise. However, with the Schrödinger bridge, as your forward SDE is somehow we can learnable. It can be bring you a more nonlinear effect or something. You can reach the transition from the data to the noise in very short, in very efficient way. That's the big motivation for the user at Schrödinger bridge.
What's the y-axis here?
Sorry, say it again.
What's the y-axis here? What does it mean? DBS1, DBS5, DSP1 to DSP5.
Oh yeah. Actually, this figure right here is showing the training process about your Schrödinger bridge. So.
They're all Schrödinger bridge, and as the model converges, then it could somehow get the time horizon converge much faster. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So the Urey diffusion model or the Urey SDE diffusion model is just the first row, but with the limited diffusion step, it always get bad performance because the involving is not enough to get a real Gaussian. And however, if we train the DSD or the diffusion Schrodinger bridge, what we got finally will be a transition chain or transition involving SDE shown as the last column. Here is the final model we'll get. And the forward will be a very nonlinear, very adaptive SDE. Just ensure you can involving or transition from the data to a Gaussian in very short steps. And we will use this as our final generative models. Is that clear? Yeah, cool. And then we'll go to the details, how exactly to define the Schrodinger bridge. Because right here, I just let you know Schrodinger bridge is something with the learnable forward and backward SDE. However, it's kind of limit or definition. So actually, the Schrodinger bridge is a very classical problem in the community about, I think, in the physics, in the optimal transaction or something. So here, because I don't want to go to too much detail about Schrodinger bridge, but here just give a very brief introduction. So what is the formal definition about Schrodinger bridge? So it's somehow like the transition about attribute to distributions, like here. So we want to find better the past measures which transfer from the p data to the p priors. P data is the data distribution, priors or attribute distribution, any distribution. So, and we have to find some past measures. To fully understand what is past measures, you need some knowledge from the advanced probability or something. But for here, you can just keep in mind past measures can be described by a SDE from some p data to the p priors. And what's the family about such SDE? SDE have some constraint. The SDE is have to ensure his the probabilistic flow about such SDE at start is p data and at the end is a p prior. So any SDE, maybe I can draw a figure here. So here is t equal to 0. Here is t equal to something. Maybe the end. And because it's SDE, at each step we have the probabilistic flow. A probabilistic distribution at each time step, and we have to ensure at t equal to 0, the SDE maybe like this one, or this one. Its distribution at t equal to 0 should be our distribution of data, and at the end of our distribution, it should be the distribution of the prior. It's somehow you can treat it like a marginal distribution, but the marginal is not is across the infinite step of your time. So it's a SDE. So if you get a little confused about what it past measure or something, yeah, just let it go. You can just treat it as a family of SDE, but SDE have some constraints. His start marginal distribution have to be your data distribution. His end marginal distribution have to be your prior, your target distribution. So here is a Q. Q is a family of such SDE. So what is P? P is something you can choose with some very simple things. We call it the reference measure or reference the past measures. It can just be some very simple SDE, or like the simple SDE, like the dx equal to the maybe x equal to db, something like this one. We always said that there be some kind of the natural and they're easy to SDE or the transition. So the definition about the Schrodinger bridge means given two distribution, I mean p data and p prior, and given a simple path about the transition, it could be a simple SDE or transition like this one. We want to find a good SDE from the family. So what's the family? The family have to ensure your start is data and your end is your prior is the target. And we should minimize the KR divergence of your SDE to the simple one to the reference one to ensure the finally SDV, the Schrodinger bridge, we call the Schrodinger bridge, the optimized the results about its optimization should be as close, as smooth, as simple as possible to the reference one. So that's the story about the Schrodinger bridge, or the formal definition about it. Is there something like the functional, the measure based the optimization? So is that clear? Yeah, cool.
So will every element in Q
It's a SD.
you can view Q is one SD, where the
No.
starting
Yeah. Q is SD, and the P
and the
right
starting
here.
the initial state follows P data, and the end state follows P prior, right?
Yes.
And P is any SD you feel like simple, just
Yeah.
leave there.
Too simple to be smooth or something, because we don't want the Q, the Schrodinger bridge, to be some very large changing things. We want to be relatively simple or don't change too much.
Okay.
Yeah, and how exactly to what's exactly the for about the SDE, the Q about Schrodinger bridge? Here, we have to introduce a very hard to mass dense probabilities and zeros to give the exactly for about the Q, about the Schrodinger bridge, the forward and backward. Let's say this zero, 1 is called the Schrodinger bridge optimality. It's just saying, given the Schrodinger bridge problem, optimization problem like this one, we can write down the optimal of the SDE of the Q of a Schrodinger bridge. This forward and backward will follow the SDE with these forms. I mean, the 7A and 7B. And you have the questions of what is the F here, what is the G here, so what is the psi here or something. So actually, I think the FMG is just something human decide the function. Actually, FMG is from your desire of your P. I mean, the simple part, the simple SD you want to use. The P actually is I think it's the DX. So the P is the SD DX. I think F DX multiply GD. So we define the P, the simple SD. This floor. Now we have FG here, and the phi. What is the phi here? I think that may be the most confusing part. So the few part, not the phi here. The phi t here is from another couple about the PDE. Is followed as the 6. It's saying if we can solve the couple of our PDE in the 6, like these very ugly terms, we can get the phi and the phi hat. And combine with this phi and the phi hat, combine with the FMG with your reference, the simple SDE, the optimal, the Schrodinger bridge of the Schrodinger bridge problem will be have the 4 about 7A and 7B. So any question about this one? Here is just a 0. Is we want to give exactly 4. What is their optimal SDE as the solution of the Schrodinger bridge will look like? Where it will be 7A and 7B. And in the 7A and 7B, to get 7A and 7B, there is a term about called the phi. And how we exactly get phi? We have to solve another couple of the PDEs here in the 6 to gather the phi. So that's what is the theory saying? It gives the optimal 4 about your Schrodinger bridge solution is provided by another couple of PDEs. So I know it's a little confused here, but just get the big ideas. Just saying, for the Schrodinger bridge, is forward and backward SDE should have these terms. We have 2 terms to handle, the phi and the phi hat. If we can get them, we got the optimal solution for the Schrodinger bridge. Sure.
So this is actually the solution of the 5, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, cool. Maybe we can step. So the next step is how we exactly get this phi and phi hat. So you said
Fine, it's called phi. It's called
sorry.
psi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks. How we exactly get the psi here and the psi hat here? Because if we get them, we can get the solution about Schrodinger bridge. Of course, we have to. The most straightforward is just we try to solve the PD couples here, and we can solve by psi and psi hat. However, it's always hard to do that because the couple of the PD is very complex or something. So some authors in this community just work out some approximate ways to approximate the psi and psi hat, and in such approximate and such as the transformation, we can get an easy way instead of solving the PD to get the psi and psi hat here. So let's go to the next step. Here, I just give another, I will recall the big picture about the Schrodinger bridge problem in diffusion models. For the score-based generative model I have introduced, actually, the forward SDE is given the F, given the G, and the backward SDE is something you have to estimate the score terms here, and you get backward SDE exactly match. And for the Schrodinger bridge, you will see the forward SDE is given by the last theory introduced, have a term like this one, the G square multiplying the gradient of the log psi, and the backward have the score like here. So that's the reason I call we want to learn the best approximation about these two things, about these things. So that's the reason I say in the score-based generative model, the forward SDE is given because we have only give FAG and here. But in the Schrodinger bridge problems, you have to use two models to approximate these two score-like core, these two terms here, and then you get a most efficient forward and backward SDE. So is that clear? Yeah, cool. Just keeping in mind, here is the forward and backward SDE for diffusion we want to learn. And how we exactly get this, just revolve lots of the derivation, very advanced probability derivation or something. So I just show you the best, the final results, final theorem to give it. To say, we can always give to build another couple of the SDE like here to replace the PD. Here, you see here the PD. We want to solve this. However, it's too hard. But we can replace these PD couples of the 6 with a new version, new set of the SDE listed here. Here's the 3. And if we want to further to solve these PDEs with some approximation, we'll get something shown in the formula 14. So the ZT and ZT hat is what we call the policy. Actually, it's just equal to the G multiply the gradient of the psi or something, and we call it policy. And recall, if we can learn or you can approximate the ZT on the policy here, and we can aesthetize the forward and backward SDE. And of course, we want to use parameterized model to learn the ZT and ZT hat, and then we're done. You may be later confused how we just from some PDE to SDE and how from SDE to this one. But to be honest, even for me, I don't get the full details about this derivation because it's lots of the very complex maths about the natural stereo, about the SDE stereo. So what I have to do is just show you, here's the results. We want to approximate these two terms. It's called a policy, and it's a kind of the solution about such showing the bridge results. So any question here?
So now the goal turns to solving equation 13A to 13C, right?
Yeah.
So how do they parameterize them?
We only parameterize on these terms in the red box, in the green box, in the 14th.
And also we we're assuming f and g is known, right? Do you
Yeah,
parameterize f?
No, f and g is given.
Okay.
Record f and g is given by the reference measure or reference single SDE we want to use in the definition about Schrodinger bridge. So f and g is given. What we only want to parameterize these things. So the next step is we use some neural network or something to parameterize the policy. I mean, gradient, just something very, actually the form is just like the score function, the score-based model. And here I just show you the object functions. But still, how they derive out and work out the object functions. There's a lot of the math and the measure about, sorry, the measure zero durations, the SDE forward and backward. So actually, I don't get the full details about here, but here I just show you the final object functions we want to handle. So actually, they have two kinds of the object function we can build and to solve this problem. But first look at variables. Like I'm saying, we want to approximate, we want to parameterize the ZT and Z hat T. The definition is given here, because given the parameterized ZT and Z hat T, we gather the analytic for about the forward and backward SD. And how we just build these things, train these two things. The one is just we can jointly to train these two network or the score or policy network. So the formulas is given here. Still, the details, the duration, and why it holds is lots of the hard math. So just keep in mind, we can, based on the likelihood things, to work out a joint training loss function to optimize the ZT and Z hat T's. Another alternative training method is we can separately just train the ZT and Z hat T. I mean, the policy about the forward and backward SD, or you can call it the diffusion term about your forward and backward SD by this two loss function, and you alternative training them. This means you first maybe you can fix the backward SDE with this term decided by the Z hat policy. You train you optimize the loss function about 18, and you get a new ZT, I mean new forward SDE. And based on the new forward SDE, you based on the loss function of 19, you train and optimate the backward policy about the ZT here, and you are done. So actually, the joint training is something relatively new. Actually, it's proposed by this paper. I think this paper is just published under ICR last year, and they just proposed a joint training. However, just like I'm saying, the Schrodinger bridge, it can be a very classical model. It's proposed, I think, 1940s. So the alternative training is based on some classical solution, numerical approximate solution to solve the Schrodinger bridge. So it's called the IPF. It's called what I didn't remember the exact name for this. So it just lets you know the story. IPF for the alternative training, alternative updates is more classical and more string and more long story, long history solution to solve such Schrodinger bridge problem. And there's some new work from the machine learning side, from deep learning side, to propose a joint training, joint likelihood. We can jointly train the forward and backward SD. So just the story here. So any questions?
Shikai, so where do you parameterize? You parameterize ZT and Z hat T as like
yes.
neural network, right?
Yes.
And how do you compute the gradient log PTSB X, like in equation 15? There is some gradient of PTSB, right?
Yeah, you mean this one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So actually, based on this theory you see here, based on this theory, the log about your PTSD, so actually is decompose. I mean, you can decompose on the
Also,
YT
you
and
just
YHAT.
add up. Okay,
yeah,
you just add
Yeah.
as
So
Z.
if you have the
yeah.
ZT and ZHT, you can just construct the log PTSD XT.
Let me think about that. So looks like so given your equation 13, you can write down the form because any SD, you can write down the solution as like initial state plus some integral, right?
Yes, that's a story about the Schrödinger bridge or this theory. You can always get there is your approximate log probability. Sorry, the log of your like the density or something, and your forward density and your backward density. The sum of your density is always meet its requirements. I mean, equal to the Schrödinger bridge density.
Yeah, I mean, for this transform, I mean, equation 13, if I just write down the solution, the form of xt, yt, and yhat, it will be just like the state x0 plus an integral. Maybe it's Eaton integral, right?
Yeah.
And then how do they evaluate? Then they said that okay, I can evaluate. But yeah, but what is the log likelihood on that? Oh, okay. The log likelihood is log PTSP at xt. Okay. Oh, that means you just evaluate the state at that time t, you get the log likelihood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, when we approximate or parameterize the ZT and ZHT, the terms like these terms, the log gradient to log density of our initial things, we can use these relations. We can, I think it's just equal to the ZT minus ZT hat or something. With very similar form.
Divided by the G function. But yeah, but yeah, you times G, yeah, this is just ZT plus ZT hat.
Yeah. The G is just given. Just you can treat it as a constant function or something.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, where's the Brownian motion term? It just takes expectation. I mean, it looks like it can be derived by using the general solution form of ISD, right? But that should contain some integral with respect to the Brownian motion. You don't have it right here.
Yeah, sorry, I have no idea about these things. Actually, the detailed derivation about the final things, I still don't get very details about this. How you get this?
Yeah, that's fine. Just I'm just trying to think about that. Okay, and for the alternative training, for this joint training, they actually just compute the log likelihood of x0, because x0 is data, you know that.
Yeah.
You even, but where's the noise data? You even do not need to consider noise data, right? For the alternative training here, alternate.
Yeah, we have to, because recall here is the expectation based on the pass from the sample pass from your current SD. So what is 7A? We can go back to here. Recall the 7A, 7A and 7B are the forward and backward SD right here. So we have to sample the pass from this given SD or given backward or forward SD, and use the sample pass, the group of sample pass, to compute the expectations.
Also, I mean, even for the joint training, you first you need to first sample from x0 to xt and then go back.
Yeah.
To compute.
Yes. So in the joint training, what is the expectation? It's also expectation over your sample of the pass about your current forward and backward SD.
Oh, I see. I missed that term. The first term is xt. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then in alternate is alternative training. you have
Yeah, you also have to sample
Okay.
from the SDE path.
yeah, but you have likelihood for explicitly for x0 and xt, x0
Yeah.
and x big T.
So actually, just I think the big picture, the mechanism for showing a bridge, they all fall in these two kind of things. I think here is more classical. Actually, here we can use some neural network, of course. I also see some people use some like a Gaussian process to parameterize the ZT and Z hat, and the object functions is very similar to this one. You just conditional on the backward, and you update your forward, and based on your forward, you update your backward. So that's the story. Alternative training about your two score estimator in the SDE.
Okay.
Here, sorry, I don't have to provide you more details because I still, for myself, I even got my confused how exactly the derivation here. I try to derive by myself, but still get some stuck. Yeah, but I just want to get the big picture about how it works. And the final things I want to take about showing a bridge is another motivation or the flexibility for this. If you will record the definition about showing the bridge, you see here is the represented by optimal, the forward and backward SDE, or you can call it the path measure between your data and the prior. Record here, we don't have any constraint on what the prior of the data should be. It cannot be, it could be the attribute prior. However, record in the diffusion model, in the SDE or the score-based diffusion model, we have to fix or we have to make the prior based on Gaussian. Then all the formulation this makes sense because you run some Markov chain, you have to build Markov chain, you have to build the time involving SDE, and finally get the Gaussian. However, if you change Gaussian to other distribution, such development about your diffusion model all fails, do not work. However, under the flexibility, under the framework of Schrödinger bridge, you can set the prior to any distribution you want. So here, I just show you a figure, the demo about this Schrödinger bridge. Here should be our x0, our data distribution. And here, the target distribution is no longer the Gaussian or something, but just like they call it spiral or something. And we can also use a Schrödinger bridge, just exactly the same framework, the same object functions to build the transition between given distribution to another distribution. So here's the story. So just I think
here you specify this reference measure P. It's just to want to make the model simple, make the bridge as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think in most cases they just say, the P, the reference, the dx. G dt something. Here's the SDE, reference SDE. In most cases, so maybe just set f equal to 0 and g to some time varying things like maybe the beta t or things like the what they call it OU process or something. So in most cases, we want to keep the f and g to be simple.
If it is simple, what's the benefit? Is the benefit that the bridge, the computation of this?
Yeah.
Bridge
if your f is 0 and I think because we want to the final SDE want to learn, it should also be simple. So if we set FMG simple, the training about this loss, alternative loss or the joint loss, the training process will be easier.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw the equation regarding x, y, and z. They are also determined by f and g. If f and g are simple, then the equations including them should be simple as well.
Yeah. But of course, you can set different f and g to be complex or dependent on the prior if you want to, you have some prior knowledge about what the optimal SDE should be like. Of course, you can set FMG based on your knowledge. So that's another flexibility about the Jungle Bridge. These things is just kind of like the prior integration framework, but not prior is not on the distribution. So this prior is on the measure, is on the path measure.
Yeah.
So here, I think I want to highlight here the flexibility of the Schrödinger bridge. So transition between attribute to distributions, and you can add the prior about this transition as the rep in NLP, and to always gather unit-wide framework to solve this. And as far, I think we just finished introduction of Schrödinger bridge, how we just from the differential model and then combine from the things. Finally, we got Schrödinger bridge. I will give our roadmap to review at the last slides. Another thing I want to think, the last thing I want to introduce about diffusion and Schrödinger bridge is the conditional case. Because all the previous introduction, they are designed for the generative models. I mean, it's an unsupervised model. What we want to do is given a data training set, and we want to model or draw the samples or model the distribution of our data. However, for more general case, we are interested in the supervised learning. So how to use the conditional diffusion or conditional Schrödinger bridge to handle the supervised learning. So actually, we want the goal is we just want to model the distribution about these things. So the one is the conditionals. These conditionals could be some label, maybe a hat, maybe this be dog or hat, dog or cat or something, or the observed values, and X should be the missing value or something. So we just replace all the PX0 in the previous framework with this conditional distribution, and we got a conditional diffusion or conditional Schrödinger bridge. Of course, there's some technical contribution you have to do, technically modify you have to do to make this conditional distribution match the diffusion or the Schrödinger bridge settings. Actually, there are lots of work, different methods do that. But the big ideal for this is just use these things to the framework to model the conditional diffusion. And here I just give 2 example how it works. Here is the I think a paper just use the conditional diffusion models to do the time series imputation. This target is given our time series with missing values. Like here's the missing values we never know, but we know there are some observations like here, and how we just imputation or fill the missing value about this time series. These things, the general idea is we first fill the missing value with some random Gaussian noise, and if we with a well-training the conditional diffusion, the random noise on the missing value parts will finally involving and match based conditional on the given observation, and finally will match given a very reasonable prediction or imputation about its time series. So here is how we use this to do the time series imputation or prediction. And another case here is the conditional image generalization. So the figure A is just the poor unsupervised, the poor generated model. We just give it a noise, and we want to use this noise to generate some model. However, for the condition B, I think let's use the conditional Schrödinger bridge is if we just fix something, we fix here I think here is the conditional parts is the Y here. There's some very low resolution about this image, and how we just based on the raw resolution, the low resolution about the image, and replace the other part with some noise, and finally we can get to a high resolution about this image, but remain the faces or the man or something. So this test is called the image super resolution. So it's conditional on your current low resolution of the image. So here is the Y, and the X, the final X, the conditional distribution is the process, is the distribution about based on your current low to the target high. and the transition is still use the diffusion, use the Schrödinger bridge, use the diffusion model. Like, so here's the story. Here's the big model how to transfer or how to apply this hot or popular diffusion model Schrödinger bridge to your old task, to your old, like our supervised task, supervised learning task. Just model the conditional distribution, and that's it. And the last slides, I want to give a roadmap, a quick review about what we're talking. The first talking about diffusion model, the DDPM. Actually, how we build this. We want to build build a transition from data to Gaussian, and in the very first introduction, we just build a Markov chain, and forward and backward is a Gaussian joint, and by just construct the Kerr divergence, the variational lower bounds, we got the optimal backward. And another perspective for this discretized diffusion model is the score-based models. Actually, the loss function we built here, based on the variational lower bounds, actually can also be worked out by the score matching, and the backward about diffusion model actually is just logical dynamics. So these two things are consistent, and actually you can treat it as two different perspectives on our same models. And here is also about the discretized things. If we just transfer from discretized to continuous, we got a SGM by SDE. So this model is just given a forward SDE is given with a continuous version about your forward Gaussian joint, and how we want to learn the backward SDE. And with the continuous settings, we have a more generalized, more unified framework to model the different settings in the discretized things. And for the Schrödinger bridge, we do the one more step generalization. We also want to learn the forward SDE, and also along with the back SDE, and we build a more generalized, more flexible framework to transition from data to any provider, but not Gaussian-wise. The number of the step of your diffusion of your involving could be shorter. You have some advantage on the time cost because your forward is learnable. You can from your data to noise with very long linear SDE or something. So that's the story about all my talk today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Shikai. So I want to ask a question. So if you go back to the theorem about the Schrödinger bridge, is associated with some equation, right?
Yeah.
Can you just go back? Oh yeah, here. So the K is essentially is to solve this psi equation, right? Psi and psi hat equation.
Yeah.
And here the psi 0 times psi hat 0 equals to p data. How do you need to know the form of p data, otherwise you cannot specify this boundary condition.
Yeah, in your formulation, well, of course you have to know the p data. However, but when you build object functions, the p data or something, you can compute these things based on your sampling. Now they're exactly for about your p data.
Yeah, I'm thinking that you guys are familiar with physics informed neural network, right?
Yeah.
So this is an obvious high dimensional PDE.
Yeah.
So why not just solve that using like physics informed neural network?
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, if we can, because psi is parameterized by neural network, if you solve it to a good accuracy, you can substitute into 7a and 7b, right? If you take gradient of x, it's straightforward. It is neural network, right?
Yeah, it looks like we can do that.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Maybe it's very hard to solve. But regarding the boundary condition like p data and p prior, even you only have the data there, you don't have the analytical form, you can do some like kernel density estimation. You can get some kind of density curve on that and specify them as kind of boundary condition.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, maybe we can discuss later about this. But overall, it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, but I think the solving, because the diffusion model itself compared to the VAE, compared to the GAN, is already built on the very solid or concrete the math settings. From diffusion model to Schrodinger bridge, you have some lot of knowledge of how to derive out these formulas and how to implement them. Lots of the tricks. So I think this field of Schrodinger bridge is, I mean, it's not such complex completely, because lots of people have the trouble to understand the math and transfer this math to the codes. So I think if you want to do something with these things, I think it's quite, if you can make it work, I think it's kind of fancy and easy to.
Yeah, I mean theoretical
impact.
contribution have already been made by physicists like in the last century. It's surprising that we can arrive this elegant result. Right, what you need is just to efficient compute the result.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I think because our group didn't work on the generative on the unsupervised model. Well, mainly our work is based on the supervised things. I think one contribution or one opportunities for this Schrodinger and for diffusion model of the Schrodinger bridge is currently all the model I have seen, the diffusion model of Schrodinger bridge, the distribution transition, they are all on the space of your observations. And here, the xt is just your time series, but here is the x is just the image. As far, I have not seen a paper with very great impact work on the latent space. So it could be set as a diffusion or Schrodinger bridge to the step-by-step transition in a latent space, like maybe for example, the embedding of the tensor, the node embedding of your tensor or some other latent factors. If we can model the latent space transition or latent space diffusion or Schrodinger bridge, they'll be, I think, relatively new and make some of the impact. But as far, I have never think about how to formulate these things in the latent space. Actually, that's the problem, or that's another disadvantage about diffusion model, because you have to keep the size. You see, if your xt is an image is of your maybe with relative large size, which 200 multiply 200 multiply 3, or your intersection or middle states, you have to keep it the size. You cannot change it because you are all the transitions in your observation space. So it's very space consuming. I mean, if you just run some very small image data set like a CFAR time, it's over just out of your CUDA memory, even with relatively longer the t-step setting or something.
Yeah, if you do the image denoising, yeah, it is a memory intensive. But if you do the, like for example, imputation of the time series data, I think it's not that high dimensional.
Yeah, but actually, after I've tried some experiments on the time series imputation, there's also it's kind of the memory intensive. So because if you time series like a zero, maybe for multi-dimensional time series, you have maybe 15 different dimensions and with thousands of your time step of time series, and you want to fit these things. And fitting your diffusion model or something. It's very easy to get out of the memory of your CUDA. So I have no idea how to solve it. Maybe the Schrodinger bridge, because with Schrodinger bridge, you can have the lower step, the diffusion step. But I think, how about if we could do some transformation or do some in the latent space? Say just do the diffusion step, maybe 50 by 3 or 15 by 3, by a shorter, by a low dimension latent space. We do diffusions in such space. And when finished diffusion, we just track back to the higher dimension, to the manifold. That would be solve the problem about the memory. And there is broader application about this diffusion and Schrodinger bridge.
Yeah, I agree. This might be useful for the work Shibo has done, and also Zheng has done about tensor time series. Yeah, that's interesting to impute the impute time series with this Schrodinger.
Yeah,
bridge.
Schrodinger. Yeah. Yeah. So any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, what makes this like old techniques popular again nowadays?
Say it again. What?
Do you know why this old techniques or algorithms are like becoming popular again?
I think it's a comment from Shandian. I think in the morning, he just said compared to the GAN, compared to the VAE, it's something like the step by step, the generation. So if you can, with some things, you can compare this transition, this generalization is more stable and could offer you more diversity to avoid something like the model collapse, and there is easy to learn because you don't want to just to learn because like for GAN, you have to learn the alternative training or use the adversary training. So it's very hard to train. With something like the normalizing flow, you have to carefully design this transition, and there is limited capacity of your model. However, the diffusion model, they're not. You don't have to design any complex things because each small step is easy. However, with lots of steps of these easy models, you can get a very complex transition, and the training function is very simple, and the training process is simple. You can get a high quality results. I think that's the reason it got very popular.
Does it has something to do with the near ODE? Like now people start to prefer this ODE thing.
Yeah. I think if you check this paper, I mean, just this SGM by SDE paper, he just gives some discussion about the connection with the neural ODE things. But I think the main difference is neural ODE. You didn't know the form about the optimal the PDE or the ODE, and you never disease to learn it. However, right here, we know exactly the form about the forward and backward PDE or SDE. What we do is we just want to learn unknown term to make the forward and backward exactly match under this framework. So there's kind of the difference.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, if not, thank you so much today. I think Shandian's gone.
This is really interesting. Thanks for looking into this. I do have one question.
Yeah.
I guess in the real world, like for example, reducing noise of an image.
Yeah.
We wouldn't know how many steps to take
Yeah.
to denoise the image. So I wonder, if for training purposes, including x -1, or like when t is -1 or -2, just having the input data being the image, and then the true training data being the same image, just seeing if that would help reduce, I don't know, overfitting.
Yeah, so your question is, in the real world, we don't know how to set exactly the denoising step from some noising to data, and how it's handled in this model, how to decide what's the step, number of steps should be their best choice. Is your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, in the theoretical part, the optimal diffusion step or the transition step or the denoising step should be infinite. The larger the better. But however, in the application, we cannot set the diffusion step to infinite, to a very large sample. So we can maybe just set a relatively large number, like 1,000 or 2,000, to generate very high resolution results or very good performance denoising results. That's the disadvantage about the initial diffusion models, because the strategy says you should first with infinite step of diffusion or noise adding, you can get the standard noise distribution, and then you should go back. However, in the real application, after even 1,000th step, we come to a distribution from data to a very close to the standard normal, but not exactly the normal, and we start from back. Of course, there's some gap between the theoretical and the application. And to squeeze the gap, we have to set the diffusion or denoising step to be large, and then just bring the costly on the sampling, on the sampling generalization. And that's their motivation, why people want to use something like the Schrodinger bridge, like the SDE-based things, to skip the setting about your T. So that's the open question. I have no idea to how to exactly set. It depends on your task. It depends on how many times you want to use to generate to train a model to generate a good quality image. But with something like the Schrodinger bridge or something, you don't have to worry about the T, just run things, and in the theoretical, you are ensure you will get a good results.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I've streamed the video to our to the YouTube channel. So I think Shibo will later post the link on there's some group seminar website, also slides. I think Shibo Shikai has given a very good tutorial about this research, and I mean not only in the SB topic, but also in this generative modeling. I think it might be interesting. It might be useful for several problems we're doing, and we can think of how to do that. To me, I think one immediate application will be the tensor time series imputation stuffs. But there might be other stuffs we can do that as well. For example, no, it's not a good example, but anyway, we can definitely discuss offline. Okay, let us stop here today. I think later I'm gonna find another presenter. Hopefully, will be Xin next week. And talk about other things. Okay, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.